Hello, I'm Lisa Jane, and today I'd like to talk about why we should accept the unacceptable, even though I don't like the term should, but I think you might agree with me. Now, I'm not talking about accepting unacceptable behavior. There are times when we might go out into our society and there may be unacceptable behaviors going on by other people, and there is a time and a place for us to actually access our courage and be able to stand up and say and do something that actually prevents that unacceptable behavior. I think that really is a quality of people in a responsibly humane society. And on a side note, I actually think that because we've been encouraged by our cultures to stay in our head, we are often very driven by fears and insecurities and anxieties. So perhaps when we see unacceptable behavior in our societies, we don't do anything because we don't really have access to our courage, which is in our heart. If I'm in my head, I'm influenced by fear. My heart is where my true, authentic, powerful courage is. So I do really believe that it's an opportunity for us to begin to spend more time being very present in our own hearts right now, because it does build courage and the power to authentically express ourselves in our everyday life. I want to talk about accepting the unacceptable. And by this, I mean, when you lose your job, when your wife leaves you, when you find your husband having an affair, when your kid's on drugs, like all of these things, and look, I'll go on with a huge list. All of these things are situations in our life that many of us feel completely powerless to overcome. I know that feeling of having a partner who has been unfaithful and then having your relationship end. Like, that is an incredibly disabling situation to be in. It's really valid that we have a whole lot of feelings around that we feel powerless, helpless, angry, resentful. Like, a whole lot of stuff will come up for us in situations like that. And one of the things that I noticed was very hard for me at first is accepting those behaviors, because they really are unacceptable. They really are unacceptable. It would be much more acceptable if there was conversations going on, if there was honesty going on, if there was trust and opportunities to discuss what's going on, rather than just finding out afterwards. Because often that's why we do find it hard to accept things. We feel betrayed. Sometimes we are so comfortable in a situation that when something happens, like a marriage breaks down, or even when we lose a loved one, our whole world has changed. Everything that we know to be true is no longer there. It's a different landscape. And sometimes that part of us, that perhaps that inner child in us, just doesn't want to admit that this is the reality of life as it is. However, I'd like you to consider one thing. And this, for me, changed everything. Accepting something that I consider unacceptable doesn't mean I don't have to act. It doesn't mean that I don't have to do anything about it. In my mind, I used to sort of think it was. I used to feel like there was something in me that if I accepted this, I was like allowing it to be. I sort of equated acceptance with letting something happen. Like with being surrendered, but surrendered in a weak sort of, I'm not going to fight this sort of way. So it was almost like there's a part of me that couldn't accept because of the fight in me. It was like, no, this is wrong. But I know that that's actually not the truth now, because I saw how fast I was able to access a much more empowered state as soon as I accepted. I'm going to suggest to you that when the unacceptable happens, first, deal with the emotion of it, because there's always two levels. There's the external event that happens, and we try, because this is how we've been raised, or most of us, to fix what's happening to us. We sort of like are hooked on to making this different. And we generally don't get very far. Like I never used to anyway. It just sort of created more of the same and a lot of agitation, a lot of powerlessness. But if I keep the external events separate to the emotional situation that's happening on, and I deal with the emotional situation, I find that I can actually change the outcome of the external event because I'm dealing with things at the right level. And I can acknowledge my feeling and validate my feelings and come to a place where I'm ready to say, you know what, I accept what's happened. I might not condone it, I might not respect it, but I completely and fully accept what's happened to me. Something shifts in me because rather than resisting what's happening and being overcome by the emotion of fighting what's happening, I come into a place of presence. And then what happens is, in that presence, I actually access my authentic self. Now I'm in a powerful place to actually do something about what's happened. If I don't do this step of accepting and of coming back into presence, I'm trying to fix my external situation from a very, very disempowered state. I'm often not clear, I'm muddled up, I'm emotional. What sort of results am I going to get? So if I can actually support my emotional self by coming back into presence, by dealing with the emotion and then acting, it is so much more better for me. And I've also noticed by coming back into that presence, I start to get more intuitively guided. It's almost like I know the best way to move forward. I have this total awakening of more clarity, which can only be good, right? So I would love to suggest that you consider this process next time you come face to face with something in your life that you find unacceptable. And let me know how you go. Make sure you subscribe and sending you love.